Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us again on the Facebook Live page of the Projector SG. We're here today to talk about The Last Artisan, which is a documentary by Craig McTurk about the last living artisan who has worked at Haw Par Villa for about 70 years and has retired around 2017, but still goes back. And it's a beautiful documentary that's available on our video on demand at the projector.sg. Please do rent it, watch it, share it with your friends also. And today we'll also have Mr. Teo's daughter here joining us to chat about growing up at Haw Par Villa and her father's experience working there for more than 70 years. But just before that, I'd like to let you guys know also we've added Singapore Gaga, which is a 2005 documentary, was the first feature documentary made by Tan Pin Pin. That's on video on demand now, so do check that out. It's a 55-minute documentary, but it'll take you down a trip down nostalgia lane, so do check that out. We do have Tan Pin Pin joining us next Saturday at 4:30 p.m. right here on our Facebook page also. So if you do want to chat with Director Tan Pin Pin, join us next Saturday. Besides that, the projector has also started our intermission bar food delivery service. It's part of our project to keep us alive. We won't be opening anytime till perhaps end July or early August. So yeah, if you're craving our grilled cheese sandwiches, do purchase that at the projector.sg/delivery. It's available Wednesdays to Sundays, 12 noon to 9 p.m. So please do support us. It's, in this period of closure. Yeah, at this point, I'll bring on Craig McTurk, the director of The Last Artisan, and Adeline Teo, who is the daughter of Mr. Teo, The Last Artisan. Hi, Adeline.
Hi, Prashant. Thanks for bringing me on live to cover that story.
No problem. Thanks for joining us. And hi, Craig.
Hi, Prashant. Hi, Adeline. How are you?
Hi, Craig.
Yeah.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you both.
So, Craig, maybe bring us through the whole genesis of this project. How did it come about?
Sure.
I know it premiered in 2018 at the Singapore International Film Festival, but just take us through that.
Okay, sure. I started this project, I guess I first brainstormed it around 2016. And there was an article that came out in the Straits Times about Mr. Teo, the last artisan who's featured in the film. And it was a story, a photo essay in the Straits Times done by a former student of mine, Yo Kai Wen.
Mm-hmm.
I thought there could be a story there. And I liked the idea of having him, Mr. Teo, having a successor. Because the way I saw it was, this could be kind of a story of Singapore, the story of Singapore, but in microcosm. So what I did was I first approached the Teo family and sort of gained their faith that and we came to an understanding that we would try to do the project. Then luckily I got some funding from National Heritage Board and Ngee Polytechnic, and generous support of Kickstarters. Mm-hmm. And then we embarked on the project that took about a little over 2 years of filming, or 2.5 years to get the whole project done. And then it premiered in 2018, December, at Singapore Film Festival. And we had 2 sold out screenings. So that's a little bit of the arc of the project.
Yeah, and it was interesting to see that it was a Kickstarter project. And in fact, Pin Pin, whose documentary that we're showing, Singapore Gaga, was also one of the Kickstarter founders. I saw in the credits list. Like, did that generate interest? And was it because people could identify with Haw Par Villa?
Yeah, it was. I guess for me, it was a learning curve. I had never done a Kickstarter project before. I did try it once, and I set my target too high. So I actually had to do it again, because if you don't hit your target, you don't get anything. Right. Mm-hmm. But I did have, in the end, I had quite a lot of backers who, I think they believed in the project. They liked the story of this kind of everyman who was creating sculptures much bigger than himself, and a guy who carries so much history just in his, in his body and in his soul. I think people connected with that, and then we were able to get about $20,000 of Kickstarter funds, which really helped. It helped because the project became quite costly to do animation and editing and everything like that. So yeah, the Kickstarter really helped.
Right. Okay. And had you been to Haw Par Villa prior?
I'd been a number of times, but it was only through this project that I met Mr. Teo.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting for me also, like growing up to see that, and then and now watching the documentary, you get a lot more insight into this whole. You take things for granted in a way, and did your narrative change as you were, embarking on this project, and also through the process of filming?
It did change, because when we started, you'll see in the film there's two apprentices, an older one and a younger one. So when I started the project, only the older one, a guy named Jin Long Chen, he was working there. But it was only like halfway through our filming that the new apprentice named Zhang Huabing, he came on board as we were halfway through filming. But at first I thought, oh, it's not gonna fit in with what I've been doing. But actually, I feel like it added more, because you see the dynamics of the three men. It's almost like Shakespearean. You have the king and you have the two sons. So I liked how you get the dynamics of the two apprentices who are basically going to take his place. But they happen to be good friends. They're both from China, so they're not really in competition with each other. They're basically workmates, and they become fast friends. So yeah, there was this scene of them also spending time outside of work, sketching and talking about their lives too. Like, was that something that you just, followed them on, or how did that scene come about? Well, this happens a lot with documentaries. Originally I wanted to film them where they live, in their house, doing like a Skype call back to China, that kind of thing. Just following them, just seeing them, cooking for themselves, and like living a kind of a guy living by himself or sharing an apartment, just showing these guys as they are in their downtime. We didn't have permission to film at their residence. So I thought, well, what else do they do? And then they told me that they like to draw. So I thought, well, maybe there could be something there. And on the day we were going to film, it rained heavily, but we were still able to get that scene underneath underneath that kind of, it's like a parapet that they sit under. So a shelter. So we filmed them there, and I just tried to set the stage, make them comfortable, but I didn't really tell them what to talk about. I might have said, can we have you call back to your wife? But, for the whole film, I never really told the guys what to talk about. That was all up to them, because I wanted to keep it really, true to them.
How was the communication? I mean, given that I assume you don't speak the language.
Yeah, I don't really speak much of Chinese at all, very little. So,
and the dialects too, right?
Yeah, and Mr. Teo speaks Teochew dialect, which I could spend a lifetime just being able to say a few sentences. So I can't say anything in Teochew. So it was a little bit complicated. I hired a husband and wife team from NUS. They're academics, but they're both professional translators. So Dean was the interpreter on our set. So Dean would usually come with us, and he would translate on the spot. Not everything that was being said, but he would translate the questions. And then I would basically check in with them. Is it a satisfactory answer? Are they giving us some quality answers? But I didn't know actually what was being said until I would read the transcript, which would be done by Dean's wife. So I would sometimes only get the transcript 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks after the shoot. So it was really like a Christmas present coming when I got the transcript. I would read through it and see, okay, is there something we could use? And Not all the time, but many times it kind of exceeded my expectations. The guys really had a sense, Mr. Teo as well. They had a sense of what I was kind of going for. And I think I feel like they were all on board. And I'm very grateful for their, just their candid answers and everything that they did, because it was all done. Everybody helped me. It was all voluntary. They helped me free of charge. And I'm very grateful for them.
Maybe at this point we should ask Adeline. So when Craig approached your family to get involved in this project, I mean, to have somebody and invite somebody in your house with the camera and everything, what was your response to that?
Well, the most important is my dad, because sometimes, a couple of times we receive interview requests. My dad kind of don't feel like doing it. But for this one, I think it's very different, because I think he has so much passion in his work that he wants the Haw Par Villa name to be out there and get more visitors to visit the place. So his passion of the place and his love of the place is still there. So he kind of, I think, Greg managed to convince him. Bringing his crew to the family activities was a bit tough, because we wouldn't know what to do, but at the same time we have to feel like they were not there. So a bit tough with especially during the Chinese New Year, with close to about 40 people in our house. That's our first day of New Year is like. So we have to make sure that tell everyone to be themselves, and ignore the crew. So yes, I didn't realize I was also in the film too.
And so you became, because I mean, it went through, it was not just Chinese New Year, it was the Qingming and all the other cultural activities throughout the year. How's your father doing now?
He's great. It was a little tough in the beginning with the COVID-19 situation and the circuit breaker. He would actually twice a month he will revisit. I mean, he'll go back to Haw Par Villa every 1st and 15th of the lunar month, because that's where the Chinese will actually have their prayer and all those. So the four-faced Buddha is there, and the Goddess of Mercy, where he continued to build from our granduncle's work. He will actually wants to pay respect, right? So it was tough for him not to go back. And his usual, I would say that his usual routine is he would go downstairs with his kopi friends 3 times a day or 4. So stopping him going down was a bit of a challenge. So recently we got him back to paint, because his grandchildren actually brought a few handicraft for him to do some painting work. And just last night, I was just talking to Craig and you that last night we auctioned off his work among our family, so to raise fund for his pocket money. And we found that his work is still there. And then now I think my siblings is trying to bring more stuff for him to continue to paint. So we'll have to find a way to go outside and buy paint for him.
Yeah, I mean, while watching the documentary was also quite, I mean, he always like, yeah, I'm done, I'm going to let go and all, but he never really seems to be able to let go. And now that you mentioned that he still goes back to Haw Par Villa ever so regularly, yeah, that's interesting to see. He still feels a connection to the space, I'm sure, because having worked there for more than 70 years, right?
Yeah, Definitely. It's not just work there for more than 70 years, because even myself, we grew up there. 4th generation, that's our house, our village, our kampong, right? So
yeah,
you feel very connected with that place. And then of course his 70 years contribution, he can't bear to part the place for sure, so he still go back there and visit. And anybody wants to go and see him could actually go on the 1st and the 15th after the lockdown is lifted.
Right. Yeah, because now the park's closed, right? And it should, hopefully reopen once phase 2 or 3 comes about. But what was it like for you growing up at Haw Par Villa? And it's gone through changes along that way, right? I mean, have you observed anything, or has your relationship with Haw Par Villa changed?
Well, until today, I still miss the place a lot, I would say. It's kind of a wave, I would say. Before the change, when they started to charged for entry. I still go back there quite often because we moved out at the place many years ago when they decided to take over the place and demolish our village house and all those. After they started revamping the whole entire place, I mean, honestly, I could not remember, the old Haw Par Villa anymore because they have moved quite a lot of stuff and they have revamped the whole entire place. So I've probably only went back once. And when the whole thing stopped again and my dad wasn't working for a couple of years before they actually brought Journey back to promote the place, which we are very happy with, then I start to go back again. So the attachment is still there, very strong attachment. I think if you ask my family, not just my immediate family, my cousins and aunties and uncles, they still have very strong attachment with the place.
Yeah, I think that there was a bit of a challenge in the community when it became this gated theme park kind of thing. I think a lot of people lost that connection during the period in the, I think, mid-90s or so. And, where I remember, I think the tickets were like $16, which at that time was quite a lot for a family to pay for. So I think now the challenge is how do we find that connection back again? They've reopened it as a public park. And it doesn't have conservation status, but I think a lot of people still have that memory of that space and do value it. But I think now it's trying to find what relevance we have in keeping that space alive. I think there was a question actually from one of our audience about, when your father was doing this in the last 70 years, did he document changes of the sculptures and the painting and the work that he did? Because I remember in the 50s or the 60s, they actually made some of the statues more modest, like the topless ones, started getting painted over, and they all had like tops now. So did your father document these things in photos?
Well, unfortunately, no, until the recent years, simply because this is his job that he brings back the dough, right? So to feed a family of 10, including himself, and plus extended family. So it's his job. So we didn't really go and take a lot of pictures and all those.
Yeah.
But one of our extended family, or rather village friends, where we lost touch, they have a stall there to take photo. When you go holiday, they will take pictures and then they charge you $5. So they may have it, but we will not have it. We won't have. But in the last couple of years, I actually, before it revamped in the I can't remember the date, but my dad sent me an assignment to take pictures of the whole place before it got revamped into a theme park. Yeah. So I have those pictures, but unfortunately, in the course of that years, that some journalists had actually borrowed a lot of album from him to do interview and all those. We lost all the photograph because it was never returned.
Oh, so you don't have them now?
I don't have them now. We do have some old pictures where Greg took some film of it. And we also have the most recent one that is already revamped. So in between, we lost a lot of old photograph, including my work before the FNN took over.
Craig, maybe there's a shirtless kind of story here for you to go and find these lost pictures. I'm sure it's such a rich trove of all these pictures, because the place has changed quite and even statues and stuff. The changing room from the swimming pool also has moved, and okay, that's really a pity.
Yeah.
So you've tried to look for it, but you haven't found it.
Yeah, I tried, and I even have media friends to ask around, but it was never returned. And my dad was really, really upset over it. So nowadays we are very precious over the stack of album that we have.
Yeah.
We probably won't lend it to anyone else unless it's necessary, or we will definitely track them down. But there's a lot of old photo for sure.
Yeah. Okay. That's a pity.
They have a lot of photos that I was able to find. You know, National Archives, they do have quite a lot of photos of Haw Par Villa over the years. And then I was able to find other photos down in Chinatown, in Singapore's Chinatown. I was able to find some at I guess you would say like a vintage shop, antique shop.
Yeah, like
yeah. So
yeah, I'm sure.
They're
Actually, speaking of the archives, I think Mr. Teo also has a few oral history recordings in the archives. I think, that was done in sometime in 2015. So if any of you are interested to hear more, you can check out the National Archives. They do have an oral history recording from Mr. Teo. There's a question from Ron here about the change of languages between Mr. Teo, who was Teochew, and the apprentice who was speaking Mandarin also. I think, Adeline, maybe does he talk about the challenges he had also in terms of communicating with his apprentices, and whether, how that changed? Because he seems to be quite close to them also, even in the coffee shop scenes and all that. Do you want to talk a bit of his relationship with the apprentices?
Yeah, it was very tough for him, I would say, because my dad is really illiterate, right? So he can't speak Mandarin, he can't speak English. He can only converse in Teochew and a bit of course, a mix of Hokkien because of his friends. So the first apprentice, he's actually from the south of China. He speaks Hokkien. So that's how in the film you will see that instead of our original Teochew language, he speaks quite a lot of Hokkien because he has to converse in Hokkien with him. Then the second apprentice, the younger one, actually was even tougher because he's not even from the same area of China. So he can't understand Hokkien. So my dad has to force himself to speak a bit of Mandarin. And of course, some of the translation was from the older apprentice to help to translate. But it's still very different where giving personal coaching and personal training, yet you cannot speak the same lingo for them to understand. It was tough.
Yeah.
And of course, he felt frustrated because he can't really give them the full picture of what he wants. The first thing. Second is, my dad has a bit of a hearing issue on one side. So he speaks very loud. So sometimes he can came across as very fierce or scolding them, but because he has the hearing issue on one side of his ear, so he had to speak very loud in order to hear himself. So all these are actually a lot of communication obstacle for sure. But I'm very surprised and happy that he tried to speak Mandarin, even though he's started from zero.
Right. Pick it up along the way, even at that age. Actually, there was a question also about, in terms of skills, and I'm not sure if either of you are able to answer this, but is there a difference between like painting dioramas and like painting, say, Chinese temple deities? There's a question on Instagram about that, and what kind of skill sets, because one of them was also like he painted houses only, another one didn't have that much experience too. So talking about the skills of painting dioramas, do you have any idea of what specific skill sets are required?
Maybe I'll walk you guys through the whole entire journey of what kind of skills needed to be an artisan of Haw Par Villa. It's not just about painting. So there are few basic things, right? It's not just painting, because painting is like, okay, my dad don't buy raw paint, don't buy ready-made paint. He buys the primary colors plus black and white, and he will mix to the closest to the actualization of the sculpture. So that is one. So if you don't know about color, or if you don't understand about basic of mixing color, then you can't do the work. And he has a very high, I would say that his skill set is very different, because what he does is he will actually coat the whole entire statue in white before he add on the color, because by having that foundation, that coat, the paint can last at least more than 3 to 5 years, because the whole entire place, only 3 people to maintain, you can't really maintain. You know, you have to keep going back. So that flush white is the base, right? Before you start adding on colors. But can you imagine that during his time without mobile phone and all those, would you actually remember what color was the original color of the statue?
Right.
He remembers it very well. Okay, so that's one. And some of the statue that broken hands and broken parts, you need to learn how to mix the cement to mend it back. So this is another skill. So it's not about just painting the statue, but you have to mend the broken arms and legs to make sure that it's complete. The last part, which is the most difficult and toughest, is if you need to paint a very high, statue, right, that's sitting at the top, no ladder can actually bring you up there. So you have to single-handedly build the stilt or the scaffolding to climb all the way up there. So you saw in one of the film that says that how the one of the apprentices was complaining that he got scolded very badly because he built it so closely. So that basic work you need to know. So these are the things. And in addition to that, right, you need to stand, stood, and squat the whole day under the hot sun or rain in order to finish the whole entire work. So can anybody does that? It's a question mark.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is it's not just a painting skills. It's also the different kind of skill sets that you need to maintain the place. And for the 2 apprentices, he did mention before, right? So like Jin Long was the first apprentice. He has no background, no skill set, and it even took him 5 years. He's nowhere near there. But because the younger apprentice, he has that background of painting houses and all those, which means that he has the basic of knowledge of colors, mixing colors and all those. So he picks up quicker than the other apprentice. So that's how, when you talk about the skill set. And then you know, there are some friends or even journalists who ask me, so do you not think that Singaporean can do it? So I think no Singaporeans will want to stand under the hot sun and rain and build a stilt, mix the paint, know how to mix the cements to mend the statue. It's very tough. It's not an easy job.
I think, your father mentioned it quite a few times through the documentary also, like he's tried, but I think in terms of the hard work kind of thing, he saw it more from the migrant workers than anyone else that he had worked with. I think maybe there are a few questions about how we see the future of Haw Par Villa. Maybe it's a good point to talk about, maybe starting with Craig. Like, I mean, when you're doing this, like also when you're doing this documentary, besides it being a portrait of the artisan, you know, did you have an expectation of how you wanted Haw Par Villa to evolve and be relevant in future?
Well, of course, I'd love to see it continue as is for as long as possible. What I love about Haw Par Villa is the fact that it feels out of place in the rest of Singapore, where everything is modernized, everything is digital. And yet here's a place where people are still mending and painting with their own hands. So I want to see it carry on as long as possible. My understanding of it is the Singapore Tourism Board kind of is the, they fund the maintenance of it. They keep it going. And I would hope that can go on for as long as possible. I know that property must be worth, a fortune, because it's on a hill, it's prime property. And it's, now it's free of charge to enter there. But I think that's, for me, I love that it's free, and that it does provide like a community service. And I like it how it's unchanged in 70 or 80 years. It was free then and it's free now. And I love that continuity. So the film is a little bit of a love letter to Haw Par Villa, just because I love the fact that as Singapore has changed so much in the 19 years that I've been living here. Haw Par Villa is one of those places where, you know, you can walk around and it's really like tangible history. You can touch the same sculptures that the Japanese army touched when they were there, you know, 75 years, 80 years ago. It's still largely unchanged, even though the sculptures have been moved around, you know, and repainted, but a lot of it is still, I guess, like stepping back in time.
Right. Yeah. Adeline, any thoughts about how you want to see the future of Haw Par Villa?
For sure, definitely. So I think first is to really thank Journey for keeping the place alive. I think they are doing a great job, but certainly they need a lot of support from the government and different organization, right? So my I have two things that I think it can keep it alive. One is if we can, I hope that Haw Par Villa will be the next UNESCO site in Singapore. Hopefully.
Right.
My extended family's dream, of course, of the place. And really the next important part is to really add technology into it. So I travel quite a lot, and I go to those museums where you have plug-in kind of an audio set to when you walk through the different parts of the museum, you tell the story. I hope that this will be added to Haw Par Villa because it's just such a strong folklore stories that has never been told to the younger generation. And of course, some people think that they are so scared to go back to the place because they have nightmares looking at the 18 Hell Gate. But I feel that adding that will actually bring the younger generation to the place, or even add technology like AR and all those into it, because I believe that the Journey is trying to make the place and keeping the place alive with a lot of activities like Halloween and all those before the circuit breaker. But if we were to do that with a strong support of organization to really add the tech part of it, I think that would be put that place in a very different perspective. As long as the place is alive, my family, my dad, especially my dad, will be very, very happy.
Yeah, because I mean it's gone from millions going there to now about 100,000 a year. So yeah, it'll definitely be good to see how we can bring more people. Interestingly, actually, some of our friends also do this DJ event, Ice Cream Sundays. They do this Haw Par Thriller event, and it's quite well attended. So I mean, it's good to see how it's being adaptive and being used in different ways. But yeah, I mean, the context of the stories and all are quite important, and yeah, it'd be great to see how we can bring children back into the space and understand that context and stories and our history in doing that.
I mean, I see one of the listeners say that is marketed. Should be marketed to new parents, and I fully agree with it, because I grew at the place where there's such a strong Chinese value in there. And if I look at my family or even my nieces and nephew, the value is still there, because even though they are the millennial, they still go back to Haw Par Villa with us, of course, to really visit the place and to walk back that kind of a journey that we have in terms of the Chinese value that's being inculcated to us.
But it also cuts across cultures. I mean, myself also, my parents brought me there when I was young, and I still remember, there was this lady giving her mother the breast milk, like that statue, and all about filial piety still stays in my mind. So I think while it was about Chinese and Buddhist and Confucian kind of values, I think it actually resonated with a lot of Singaporeans, like across different cultures, and that's, to me, the beauty of that space also, and the fact that it was an open public space that was gifted to the community by a philanthropist. And it says so much about the value of that space, where now a lot of things end up being gated, and access is being deprived from everyone. So yeah, I'm looking forward to going back there after watching this documentary. Like I feel that I need to go back again to see this once it reopens.
Yeah, and I received like 3 requests from my foreign colleague is asking me to bring them back to the place and walk them through the place.
Yeah. Great. All right. Thanks a lot for joining us today. Any last words, Craig and Adeline?
Well, I hope if you haven't seen the film yet, I hope you have a chance to see it. And, you know, I would love to, maybe in the future, if we ever do a live screening at the projector, it would be great to have Mr. Teo come there in person. That would be really, that would be one of my dreams in the future. So I hope you have a chance to see the film. And if you do see it and you enjoy it, please spread the word with your friends. Thank you.
Yeah, I think for me, yes, thank you, Greg, for doing the film. A lot of hard work and thanks to the crew too. I hope everyone gets to see the film, and not only that, once you see the film, go back and visit Haw Par Villa, and you can feel the strong connections between the film and the place. And of course, hopefully everyone can echo to keep the place alive, please, because it's sitting on the prime land.
Yeah, that sword is hanging over it in a way, but yeah, no, we hope that we create enough awareness and find purpose and connection with that space and keep it relevant.
Yeah,
Great.
and also one last thing is my dad is now continue to paint. So if you have those sculptures and all those, you can ping me separately.
Right. For him to paint. Oh, great. So we can commission him also.
Because I try to go online to buy, but it's very, very difficult to buy any sculptures or figurines online. So it was a bit of a challenge. Me and my cousin Pitin is an artist, so we just had this conversation this morning, how to buy those stuff and get him to paint.
Right. Okay. Great. And keep him engaged also, right, in this post-retirement time. All right. Thank you very much for joining us today, Craig.
Thank you, Prashant, for hosting, and thanks to the projector for hosting the film. We're very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for being live on Facebook.
Yeah, thanks for joining us today. Okay.
Cheers.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.